taking away their ideas, you're adding on, but it's like so simple.
And one thing you maybe haven't noticed is it's not only redirection of their thinking, it's also redirection of their focus. Like the Play-Doh is distracting. And so you'll notice like they'll start playing with the Play-Doh while we're trying to have a conversation. So I'll just pick it up and take it away from them. I don't make a big deal out of it. Or at one point, like, you know, one of them was like playing with a little tiny piece of it. And so I just kind of leaned over and whispered in their ear, like, hey, you got to pay attention. You're not participating. And so like just those, like, I think one of the things that new teachers in particular struggle with is that they don't want to correct misbehavior, right? But if a kid is off task, they're not learning. Or they're not thinking about, like, they have to be thinking about the thing you want them to think about in order to learn it. And so just those little minor corrections in behavior, sometimes that's standing near the kid, sometimes it's like actually just kind of whispering quietly, like, hey, like, come back, like, get back on task. And sometimes it's just, you know, touching their shoulder, you know, it could be, or even sometimes it's just a look that you can give them to get them kind of back on task. But, you know, like, kids get off task, and, you know, that's the reality of teaching, and we have to be willing to, like, get them back on task.
For sure, yeah. We even noticed that in Miss B's class when we went, and even the little side things she was doing.
Yep.
Not calling anyone out necessarily,
Yep.
but just kind of trying to redirect their focus within the large.
Yeah, and I think that's the big mistake that a lot of teachers make, is that they call kids out, like, hey, Mabel, you're not paying attention. Or they call on kids, like they'll ask a question and call on the kid who's not paying attention. Well, all you've done now is embarrass that kid, and that doesn't help build the rapport. That doesn't get the kid back on task. If anything, it makes the kid mad at you and wants to get more off task.
Right, for sure.
So
yeah, I think it went good. Obviously, I mean, if we were to do this in a real classroom, it'd be a lot more extended. So how long do you think these lessons would take if you were?
I think the amount of time is probably that we've kind of planned for, like kind of 4 20-minute lessons is about right, because we're only at 50 minutes roughly, right?
Yeah.
So like 80 minutes should be plenty of time. It might not even take that long. Because I mean, I think the majority of the time is going to be on the actual making of the model, right? Because the content itself isn't really that difficult. Like understanding that landforms come in different shapes and sizes, and that bodies of water come in different shapes and sizes, you can get to that pretty quickly. But then giving them time to actually make their models, go outside and make observations so that they can come back in, that's all going to take a little bit more time. So the 80 minutes is probably about right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but that's good that they get to go out and make their own observations before refining the models. So now they can even pull some of that content they learned now to make it better. So
and that's key. Like that's the concrete experience, and that's also where you can kind of assess how are they transferring what they're observing to the model.
Oh yeah, for sure. I didn't even think. Yeah, exactly. So do you think the questions that I came up with, like for the standard, the NGSS standard, were okay?
Yep, I think those make a lot of sense. And I asked those kind of I asked them, like, what are some things we can do to improve our model, and they kind of talked about the shapes a lot. So I also said, well, what about the size, to kind of get at that, like the shapes and kinds, like the very last question on there, because I wanted them to get at both the shapes and the sizes, which is in the standard too. So no, I think those are fine. And then the thing about lesson plans is that they almost never go as planned, right? You plan a lesson and you think about it because then you're ready. But then when you actually go to teach it, you just kind of got to roll with it a little bit.
Yeah, kind of navigate it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, practice. But yeah, I was a little hesitant, because I wasn't so sure of how, like, general but specific they should be, because it was addressing the standard. So obviously I want to make sure I'm asking the right questions so I know my students are understanding the standard. But
right, and I think part of it is you want to be specific. You know, like if the standard is about different sizes of landforms, you want to ask a question specifically about the different sizes. But you don't want to just say, like, you know, do landforms come in different sizes? Because that's just, well, yes, of course they do.
Right.
But if you ask something like, you know, what are some, like what can we say about the size of different landforms? Like, that opens it up, and you're going to get more information from the kids rather than just like the yes or no approach.
Yeah, I'm definitely staying away from those yes or no questions.
And that's gonna take practice, and that's where the practicum would have been really helpful, because like you get that practice, and then I'd be watching you because one of the hard parts about asking yes no questions is that most of us don't even realize we're doing it.
We're doing it right.
Yep.
Yeah. It does, but since you pointed out our first times doing practicum,
Mhm.
I'm noticing now I'm kind of catching myself. Like when I think about it, I'm like, okay. When as I'm saying, I'm like, no, this is a yes or no question. Like, how can I change it around so that it's more open ended? I can't ask a yes or no question.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm definitely gonna continue to practice with that. But thank you for
Yep.
taking the time to actually teach it to your kids.
Yeah.
So that we can
No,
be.
they love it. It's great.
They do. Hi, you guys did a good job. Yeah, so yeah, that's good. I'm glad I was able to see it
Yeah.
live. So
Yep, and I'll upload the video and send it your way either later today or sometime tomorrow.
Okay, cool. Yeah, but I just wanted to make sure I had any questions because my thing too is like I don't mind being online, but then again, I'm kind of a person that sometimes needs to ask like little quick questions in between. Yep. So yeah, thank you for getting on Zoom. So
yeah, no problem.
Get some questions answered. So is there any follow-up assignments with this?
Not for this, just to kind of like if there's anything that you feel like maybe you could make more clear in your lesson plan, because remember we're going to share the lesson plans on my like that kind of share document. Just a second, okay? I'm going to share it with other teachers. So like if there's anything that you feel like maybe could be clarified, you could always add that. But no, there's no like formal thing that you need to do with this.
Okay, cool. And so it's fine like this week, or do we need to continue adding on? Or
No, I think it's probably okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Okay, cool. Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you so much for all your help.
And I'll be in touch with further instructions for the rest of the semester too.
Okay. Have a great day.
Yep. See ya.
Bye.
I think I just finished my wall. I just about finished my
So
wall.
Lincoln, tell me about this. What's going on here?
It's a river, of course. So the river would like kind of start up here. It goes down almost diagonal, but I couldn't really do that.
Yep.
So and then it comes out like these goes through it. Then there's another river coming this way
Oh, okay.
that meets this river, and they flow this way.
Nice.
Like this is a more powerful river, which changes the current up this
How do
way.
you know this one flows this way? No. I mean, just from your observations outside, how do you know this goes this way?
Well, it's longer.
Okay.
It's like heading.
But the downhill that way. No, that way actually.
Yeah, the downhill is going that way.
Oh,
So
okay.
it'll go that way.
Okay. So Mabel, tell me about yours.
Right now I'm kind of labeling them.
Oh, I see.
So
So tell me about this part down here. Like I see that this is rain, but what's going on here?
These are supposed to be the steps.
Mm-hmm. So what does that represent in your model?
This represents a river on steps.
Okay. Interesting.
Then mine's gonna be like sideways. And I might have to do the maybe use this to make a
So where are you thinking about putting your river? Yeah.
like right here and maybe under, maybe a bit under,
Okay.
like this all.
So what's this guy right here?
Oh, that the part where it goes down.
I don't think I understand.
Like it goes down. It goes like down. By this is the part by the step. That's
So is it like
by the
this?
step.
Or is it like this?
Like this. It's just not gonna stand like that.
I
but
see.
It'll fall apart like that.
Okay.
Goes
So if
inside.
it was up like this, where would the river be?
Like
Ah. Okay.
this, just about.
Okay. That's interesting, buddy. All right, guys.